Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Data, information warfare, information threat is very, very critical for us to understand. We consume so much information on a daily basis on social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whole lot of things. And I'm talking about YouTube while being on YouTube. There is just so much of collection of data that happens. There's so much of information that is provided for us to understand what is happening around us. What is real? How much of it is actually just another part of propaganda? And what is the threat of us being connected to so many different platforms around the world? Who controls all this? And what can he do with it? I'm here with Col Pavithran Rajan to discuss this particular thing. I'm sure all of you have seen his podcast with Smita Prakash and would have gotten a little bit of an insight as to what his thought processes are. I'm going to take it a little forward and understand what he knows about the threat facing us today. Sir, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adi. Great pleasure and honor to be invited to your show. So, this information domain and information communication technologies. Okay, I myself I call it a perpetual student of this particular domain when I started getting into information warfare. So, information is what holds us together as a society. We are social animals, and we need to constantly communicate. And in that communication, we start influencing each other. So the origin of tribes, religions, nations, etc., have all got to do with uh, the information. Okay. Now, with the advent of information and communication technologies and the internet, this has gone up one patch up, and that concept of information warfare was pioneered by the Americans. Okay. How do you go about, making information itself as a tool of warfare? So I take you back to the Sun Tzu and the Art of War. He clearly says uh, to win without fighting is the acme of war. Okay, how do you win without fighting? Because if the other side doesn't even know there is a war on, and unwittingly as a person or a society buy into another's narrative, war is over. They won. Okay, so how do you do it? People historically, if you look at the human race, we have evolved last 300 to 200,000 years. We have a recorded history of around approximately 10,000 years. Not everything clear, but at least we understand what happened in the last 10,000 years in bits and pieces. And our brains are all towards storytelling, the stories which we tell ourselves, we tell our children. Who are we? What are we? Identity. Okay, how did we evolve? So that gives us a worldview of who are we as a people and how we are as a what religion have we been born into, what nation are we, what do we stand for? So if by capturing of information, the data, because you're constantly on social media, like you said, and you're sharing a lot of information, it can slowly, people can slowly discern how you think, what makes you click, what makes you react, and if there are sensors on your body which gives the reactions. Okay, does this raise your blood pressure? Does it give you a smile? There are so many things which are involved with it. And since we have started exploring the brain, and when you say that you're going to directly communicate with the brain to through ICT interfaces, wherein you don't have to click on anything anymore, you just need to think. The reverse also will be true. People will be able to slowly control you. So that, in a very nutshell, let me put it, that's how I perceive the information domain. And historically, what have people tried to do? The elites of the land have always tried to control the rest. And we see that happening even today. People finally who control technology, who are billionaires, if they can control you, or if governments can control you, or the billionaires behind the governments can control you, that's what society is going towards, and they've always aspired for. It has not changed much.
You've touched upon a very touchy subject, sir. I mean, that's a very interesting thing. You know, let's dwell step by step into this. I know, I mean, because of your recent podcast, I think A lot of us know who you are and what you've done and stuff like that, and your interest in the information domain. The biggest thing that I want to ask you, sir, for a layman to understand the concept of information security. I mean, when you started up, you yourself said that you were not very, you didn't know how this game worked, and then you were introduced into this, and then you did a formal study of it, sir. Not everyone who's consuming the information has the time to do the study and to understand how these things can affect and impact uh, everyday life. How do you begin to understand information security and start securing yourself?
So
I know the second part is very heavy, sir. So let's understand the first part.
information security, when you talk about it, there are multiple aspects to it.
Yes, sir.
Let me try and get you into the physical domain and give you corollaries so that we can understand. How are you, Adi, secure? You're sitting at your home. You are sitting in a very proud and peaceful country called India. You're sitting in a city where things are normal. There is a constitution which upholds the law. There is a police force to secure yourself. You're sitting in your house. You got four walls. There are norms in which how people can access you. So you do feel
Safe.
relatively secure.
Hmm.
Correct. But there are multiple things otherwise which can happen, which can disturb you. There can be communal violences. Someone can try to kill you. There can be a asteroid which can come and hit your city. Anything could go wrong to. So when you look at from that point to information security, you will realize that everything finally what you have is got to do with nations. Okay. So for physical security, no nation, no constitution, no law, no police force, no army to defend you, no security. Precisely the same in the information domain. Who are you and why will they protect you? Unless you and we, the people, have created a law and we have legislation and we have an army to protect in the information space, there is no protection. Then comes to the granular, self of Adi. When you go down to that one person, how do I protect Adi from the information domain? Finally, it comes back to, has the nation created laws? Have they created norms? Do they have an army? Do they have a police force? Uh, that's precisely how Adi will be secured. He himself, what can he do? He can take precautions, but can he secure himself? You might decide not to walk on a dark alley at night in a area known for criminality. Those are the small things which you can do. Otherwise, what can you do to protect yourself? So I hope I've given you a glimpse on how to tackle this subject, where people can make sense of what is information security.
So the interesting thing that we see. Okay, let me take specifics. For example, Twitter. Twitter is a very powerful medium, and when we saw, and I'll give two examples. One was the Ukraine war. We saw the narrative of the Russians being stupid and incompetent being doled out on Twitter like there was no tomorrow. Of course, the Russians took a long time, of almost 6-8 months, to come back and bring their presence back on Twitter. And this probably happened when Elon Musk kind of took it over. Till that time, the Twitter was completely controlled. It was one-sided, absolutely completely controlled, which led half the world to believe that I God alone knows how what is actually happening on the ground. Now, this is a medium that has actually garnered the attention of people who are seeking information of any kind. I mean, people want to joke around with each other, they go to Twitter. They want people like us who want to read about what's happening around the world, what people are saying about that. We go to Twitter. Now, this is a very powerful medium which controls what we think about various different issues around the world. Now, if we don't within India understand the bias behind Twitter, we will never be able to actually discern the correct information from wrong. Now, that's a lot of work. How do you propose? Again, I'm bringing back to the same thing. How do you propose when somebody is consuming information to figure out what is the game behind this? And electronic mediums are the most powerful systems today, sir.
Okay, I take you again back to the physical corollary to explain
Yeah.
Twitter. In the physical world, there are, if you take 100 people, you will realize that majority are religious, majority, follow a particular religion. They will either listen to a guru or a priest or a pujari to discern how the world is functioning. So in Twitter, it's a medium in which influencers, okay, people tend to follow influencers whom they feel they will learn something from, and they tend to consume what the influencer says. So that is a e-guru. Okay, you can call him the e-guru. Uh, Now, that e-guru, whether he is wise or he's a charlatan or he is not that wise, all that is possible, right? If you look at your ancient history, gurus have all gurus which have been acknowledged have had to concede to bigger gurus. Gurus have been exposed as charlatans. Gurus have been exposed as frauds. So Twitter is more or less the same. So when I look at it from our national perspective, what is Twitter? It's an American company. It stores data somewhere else. It understands who all are consuming what data, who are the influencers. They can, it clearly shows that if you take out a tweet, they can project it, they can suppress it. All this is known. But we're still on there because nature of man is everyone loves to be a guru because it increases the potential, and you being a social being feels that if I am on Twitter, I'll be able to get people to know the truth. Whether that is the whole truth, whether it's the real truth, that's a different matter. But finally comes down to control. Okay, your truth, is it convenient to the powers that be? Is it an Indian narrative which is being pushed? Of course, the Twitter being a US company is under the US laws, will put US narratives, not Indian narratives. Now, if you allow Twitter to come here, there are two ways you can handle Twitter. Other is I saw the tweet today which Jack Dorsey says the Indian government threatened us. Great if they threatened him because he was creating chaos out here, and that
Absolutely.
particular okay, and that's how I look at it. But where are the laws? Because we don't want to be ruled by people, we want to be ruled by laws. How do we handle Twitter? If Twitter is allowed to operate in India, what are the norms in which they operate? Is the data first stored in India? So that exposes which come, that something can be, some things which are convenient to Twitter can be, fanned more. Something which is not convenient to Twitter can be suppressed. Do you want some other company from some other nation to come and do this to you? So if you say, okay, we localize the data, we ensure that you run the company from India, your people will be, who are running it. Great. You want to earn money? Great. That's okay. Companies are allowed to come, trade, earn money. No problem. Or if companies are allowed to come and sell their narratives, is it in your national interest? Back to you.
You brought about data, and I'm this, I guess, somewhere down the lines. Okay, let me just make a light statement that whenever somebody wants to travel to USA, you don't mind giving your fingerprint, footprint, back print, head print, lip print, no print, no problem. But when people ask for data of their personal being within India for any particular purpose, we all have a problem in how it is stored. Evidently, data is a big threat. There is no question. And a lot of people say data is the next weapon. Uh, how do you kind of help us understand this particular thing? So, of course, you very clearly elucidated that all these social platforms are storing data abroad, they're not within India. So, what is the threat? How is it going to be used in case it is used? And what do we understand of it, sir?
So you touched on multiple subjects. First is if you have to travel to the US or I have to travel to the US. Yes, US is a different nation. They have got different laws. They would like to identify who you are. So they say, if you want to come to our nation, please give your prints. I have no choice in this matter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if I can say, okay, I don't want to come to you, but if I have to come to you, you have to go as per their laws. We have to give your prints. We have no choice. Now comes to India. Okay, we as humans instinctively know the US, even if they have those fingerprints, they might affect you in some way, but they cannot affect your daily life. But uh, if you give it to uh, the state in India, there are always people behind the state, the local police cop, the IT guy, okay, the local criminal, all those guys now come into picture. you instinctively understand if he gets hold of your data, he can create trouble for you. Okay, I have my son is 18 years old. Whenever I walk into my room, you can see he immediately switches screen. Privacy. He doesn't want me to see what he is doing. Okay, he doesn't mind other people seeing it, but he knows his dad can make his life miserable.
Hmm.
Immediate effect. So that is why
That's a
instinctively
very
you don't want.
interesting example. Yeah.
Yeah, that is instinct. That is the reason why, you know. So your laws are basically meant to protect you. Okay, because we the people have elected our representatives to give us the law. It is not meant for government servants to rule over you.
Hmm.
So that is why we realize when we give this data, can it be misused? Can we be troubled? Can someone have an ego problem with you? Can someone who doesn't like your face trouble you? Because we see it with petty bureaucracy every day that you get troubled. People always are looking for, that's our instinctive, we immediately understand. So
Vulnerability.
those are two different things, and we cannot compare each other. So definitely in India, we should be made to give our data as per our laws. Where is the law? Who's made that law? Has it gone through the whole process? Has it been evaluated? Is it to our advantage? Is it to our loss? Elementary, no? Now comes to your next. What was your next question? When I start talking like that, I tend to forget.
No, no, no. I mean, you've touched upon something very interesting. Uh, I let me just take you to the data law itself. I mean, the threat of the Americans holding data, and we discussed about the social platforms holding the data there. What is the threat, sir? We
Yeah.
also saw these hacks happening in America. There was a
So
huge
there are
data leak in
so
America
let me
itself.
tell you, there are multiple threats. Okay, for another nation holding your data.
Sir.
First is, we all instinctively realize that every nation today realizes that another nation's government can affect you. If the Republicans get elected, there are certain people in India who are happy. If the Democrats get elected, there are certain people again in India who are
Absolutely.
happy.
Mm.
So first is electoral risk. Cambridge Analytica is clearly bought out. If someone else has your data, they can affect your electoral process. Okay. Second is social cohesion. A nation like India cannot immediately be taken on or invaded by other nations or controlled. Okay, unless things, and we tacitly understand, the elites understand that unless things go nuclear, Pakistan, China, or any other nation cannot just come and roll over us. It's not going to be that easy. And we also got nukes, so we feel like we are equally this. But how do other nations look at you when they look at such a big nation? What did Pakistan try to do? They said, let us defeat them by 1,000 cuts, which they have been trying for the last 30 years. But with data, you give them the data, they can affect your deep hinterland, your electoral process, your social cohesion. They can also do many other things to target certain people, because everything in the information domain is finally zeros and ones, which can easily be changed. Okay, Aadi Achand is posting shows which are not pleasing to someone in some other part of this. If I have control over his email, can I then, 10 years back, can I show Aadi Achand and put one child pornography picture in,
Mm-hmm.
Aadi Achand's 10-year-old male, then slowly leak it out to the local cop that Aadi Achand is a, pedophile, and they come and check and they arrest you. You wouldn't even come to know that it was a third nation who has done that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm giving you simple this.
Mm.
In times of war, a general, okay, he's concentrating on fighting a war, and suddenly his wife calls up and says, "Hey, our bank account has gone khali. Okay, my daughter is there. She doesn't have money. This has happened." Will the general concentrate on the war, or will he start thinking about his daughter and wife? So I'm giving you various small examples what will happen if your data is not under your sovereign jurisdiction and your controls and your law. And it is not only the law. If you don't have control of the ICT domain itself, which is this to you, which is controlling this whole infrastructure. Even if you have a law and you put a Chinese laptop with a Chinese OS with a Chinese router, and they change everything, and your money gets wiped out.
Mm.
Okay,
We
you
see
won.
this. We see this on both sides of the paradigm. So, as a matter of fact, the Americans and okay, let's take China on one side and leave the Americans out for the moment. Uh, we see on both sides of the paradigm. We got news that the Chinese want to remove Windows systems from their offices, and as a matter of fact, they've given a deadline to the CCP, including the guy sitting in Hong Kong, to remove any Windows setups from their systems, and they need to change which is millions and millions of computers, I'm sure. And we also see this similar sort of a feeling if you look at it. India banned TikTok because that was, again, the reason given was data security. So there is a feeling on both sides of the paradigm that we are vulnerable. Now, is it that there are intrinsic inbuilt bugs, or I don't know how we would want to call it, which can actually impact certain things when it is made out of a certain country of origin? For example, if there's a cell phone made in China, do they actually carry certain back-ending processes or something which could help the Chinese get more information about us, sir, in times of crisis?
Okay, so when you look at information security, I have no diagram to show. They call it information security is controlled by something called the OSI layers.
Yes, sir.
OSI layers start off from the hardware, that is the chips, and keeps
Hmm.
rising up to the application layer. Okay, maybe at some later time you can put a diagram and explain that to your viewers. So if you do not control those layers, uh, anyone who has particular control over any of those layers can play around at the application layer, which is what we finally see. Okay. So after Snowden, it was very clear that all the iconic companies in this domain are all hand in glove with the deep state or the security establishment of the United States. A couple of years back, China brought in a new law wherein it says similar thing. Any Chinese company or Chinese citizen is supposed to assist. Those are laws which we are aware of. And since there is rising tensions, they realize if you allow ICT is a domain where what is propagated to us is the backdoor vulnerability. If there is some flaw in the code, others can access it. But I, in information warfare, mostly look at the front door. Front door is the company and its product itself. If you go on to Google, Google has your data. If you go on to Microsoft, Microsoft has your data. If you go into Apple, Apple has your data. All of them will protect you from each other, okay, or a third party accessing that data. But what about that company itself? If that company is part of the security establishment, they've already got the data. And in these things, it's always controllable. ICT is all about control. It is constant update. Software is all about constant. New vulnerabilities are discovered, new problems keep arising, so there are constant updates and patches. To apply these patches, all these companies need to have their establishment backdoors through which they update the patches, and the user has no control. Okay, even if you buy a smartphone, you are just a user. The owner remains the operating system and the people who have created that phone. Okay, they have it. They are the actual owners. You are just the operators. So definitely there is a national security threat if an advisory creates a product and puts it into you. For us today, we are
Uh,
seeing tensions with China on the LAC, so we immediately realize there is a Chinese threat. Okay, and when we have Chinese routers controlling our mm, gateways, etc., we know this can be dangerous. We realize if the Chinese are controlling the power grid, uh, dangerous. Today, we have no problems with the West, but we also realize in the gray zone warfare, there is no friends or enemies, it's all
no.
permanent competition.
Mhm.
So if you don't realize that there is a tacit, that's why I keep saying we need to control this. ICT is like the nervous system of a human body. How can you hand over the nervous system to someone else and think yourself as autonomous and secure? I hope I've clarified your doubts.
No,
Back to you.
absolutely, sir. This is a setup that I guess we fallen too fast into this game. So has the development of information technology been too fast for anybody to kind of realize where we went? We just started adopting the technology to make our lives easier rather than actually understand what the technology is, what are the drawbacks, what are the advantages. And I said drawbacks first for a particular reason that you're also very keenly bringing out. Have we gone too fast in this domain?
I don't think we have gone fast, but we have bought into narratives which are not convenient to us. And when a nation which tries to push a particular domain or a narrative, they will have philosophers and bards and poets which will start extolling the religion. And you know same thing happened in ICT. For information communication technology and internet to penetrate, there had to be a thought process of globalization. There had to be, the world is a global village, the world is flat. All those philosophers who have taken out these statements. Okay, so narrations are taken out to push a particular um, strategy, always in the history of mankind. Okay, a particular narrative is used to push a particular strategy. And same thing happened here. There are nations which are, after Snowden, we could have done a course correction. We did not. Other nations did. So, it is not the speed at which you went into the thing. It is how agile are you, and are your interests actually national, or are your interests primarily money making? So, if you look at the history of India in the last 1,000 years, we all know Jaichand and Mir Jafar are two famous guys. Okay, which we say, oh, he was a Jaichand or he was a Mir Jafar.
Yeah.
But actually, the East India Company took over India because the Indian business class started earning money out of East India Company, and they started backing them up.
Economic subversion.
Yes, that's the same thing which is happening today also. Back to you.
The most interesting thing, I mean, you're each answer you're giving me, so there's a burst of questions that are coming out, because for me, the interesting thing is that you spoke about a narrative that we bought off of the of the utilization of these platforms. Ki bhai, these are good, you can express yourself, you can do this, you can do that, see nice photographs. The women, women folk are very interested in putting photographs and this and that. The traveler folk are very interested in putting their adventures. The pet lovers are very interested in putting their lives on the line today. You're basically putting whatever you're doing on a daily basis online, where you're going, where you're coming, everything. Now, this brings me to the threat of artificial intelligence, which a lot of us tend to believe is a little further away in our lives. I tend to believe it is already here. Google, to me, is one of the biggest forms of artificial intelligence that we interact with all the time. Would you agree, sir? And what else are the threats of the artificial intelligence platforms that we don't realize but we use every day?
The ability to foresee events is key here. In time frames where the human being usually does not think.
Hmm.
You might have a vague idea, okay, there is a threat in the information domain, but that is vague and slightly ahead. The immediate thing which attracts your brain is narcissism. Okay, I have a lot of nieces, and whenever I see them, they always are taking selfies and posting it all over, because that is in the instinct, that is in the human instinct to share that. Okay, and I see them also making a lot of faces, and I usually start laughing because okay, I understand why they're doing it.
No,
And
that's fine. I mean, it's their
yeah,
choice,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, and they also do read what I'm telling them, and they're very interested and they're very supportive about that's what makes it all the more interesting for me. In spite of knowing the dangers, it really doesn't matter to them because they're not able to actually visualize what can go wrong, and it is not in any case immediate. For example,
nah.
cigarette smoking will get you cancer in a few decades, maybe. Okay, but that in a few decades and maybe is okay. Right now, it's much more cooler to smoke it immediately. That is human nature,
Yeah.
and I think that explains why people, in spite of, and societies, in spite of knowing the trap, and our political system is all about immediate and now. Maximum a government can think of is 4 years, not even the fifth year. He's already in
Mhm.
election mode in the fifth year. Okay, so there is an inherent weakness in our democratic structure where political parties itself, their vision is only 4 years. But something like the CCP, which has been in power throughout, I'm not saying I'm batting for authoritarian states. I definitely do
No.
not want to be part of a CCP.
Yeah, yeah.
They are thinking of 100, 200 because they want to still stay alive. They want it to be relevant. They can think. In the West, also, they have thought of 100, 200, 300 years. The reason is not because of the political system, it is because of the amount of wealth which the elites accrued because of global domination and colonialism. There, the elites think, whichever party is in power really doesn't matter, the elites think. Indian elites are not truly independent in that way, Their dependence, their wealth is all dependent on the elites sitting abroad. It is not they are creating technologies and they're pushing the this. These are people just doing trading and getting certain concessions, and that's how I see it. I hope it does make sense to you too.
It does, sir. As a matter of fact, the study of international politics is known as geopolitics. Would
Hmm.
you term the study of technological politics as technopolitics going forward? Because I think there needs to be a structure wherein to understand the back-ending threat that actually comes along with technology as well. Of course, it does make our lives better, does a lot of good things, but is there a need to kind of understand and broad frame this within a structure? I don't know abroad, but within India, to kind of
Yeah. So in
materialize this
India,
threat, sir.
we people are taught cybersecurity.
Sir.
Uh, Not many are taught information warfare.
Hmm.
So that subject already exists. I do teach it. So when I teach my students, who usually are postgraduates and some doctoral candidates, they already understand technology quite a bit, much more than me. But I always tell them, unless you have a larger picture, which is information warfare and how nations survive and how nation society is this, you will be blind. So information warfare is a subject. You don't need to invent a new thing called, geotech. It is already present. The subject itself is already present. You only need to, and information warfare is a multidisciplinary field where you have to learn multiple disciplines to understand that.
Hmm.
So I would say that in today's governance structures, if people who are governing do not understand information or information warfare, we are in trouble.
Two last questions, sir. One is, of course, China, which is my favorite country. Um, they've got this great firewall, or as they term it. And what do you think is this great firewall, or how does this work? Is there something called the great firewall? Is it as robust as we believe it is, or is it as flimsy as the? I mean, is it as flimsy as anything else?
China is also a very interesting country for me because there's a lot to learn from them. What they've done is a great miracle in pulling up, that sort of population from poverty, maybe even behind India, to the
Mhm.
levels which they have reached today. But that said, I don't think they have ever talked about a great Chinese firewall. Okay, they do have a wall, the Great Wall of China, but that great Chinese firewall was again a Western thing which we have sought as the norm. Okay, but what they have done is the Chinese Communist Party, because they are very, very careful, and the founding fathers of that nation got the power by military action rather than being gifted. Most of the, if you look at our founding fathers of our current republic, most of them were lawyers. Okay, and in certain ways, they were gifted power. They did not capture it. Okay, and that did not give us very firm foundations. This is my own, way. They looked at many other nations. They, created that constitution, but national security was not the founding cornerstone of, the Indian Republic's foundation. This I say it, and I say it with a lot of responsibility. What I have read is that our first prime minister was, suspicious of the military because he saw the neighboring countries were all being taken over by
Mhm.
military, dictatorships, and I wouldn't blame him. Rightly so. He might have wanted to maintain it as a democracy, but keeping military away from power structures has made our military insular. Our military in the Indian military, there is a term called whites. If you go for training, they issue certain thing called whites, where an exercise is situated within that whites. Okay, so you don't question the whites, uh, and because they are not in governance, they know instinctively that the nation does not want to them to look at the larger picture. They stick to the whites. Okay, and the bureaucracy is the one today which, because the political leadership historically in India never had time for getting into national security aspects. It is a bureaucratic chain which has managed to control, and the bureaucracy has got their inherent interests depending on the personalities who have come and sat in that particular chair. But one thing which I've seen about the Indian bureaucracy is control of money. They control the Indian nation by ensuring that they have control of the money. Now, I was told by a very eminent academician who had an exposure in the West. He told me that in an engineering college of 5,000 students, the principal has got a permission to spend 500 rupees. Anything above that, he has to go to the state bureaucracy. He says, now, if the principal of a college which has got 5,000 students can only think up to 500 rupees, what sort of leadership ability will he inject into his rest of his staff or the faculty? And that slowly rubs off. I've seen the same thing in the Indian military. A general from a second lieutenant, when an officer, today as from a lieutenant he becomes a general. It's not that the lieutenant or right from the academy is trained to be a general. It is a system which trains a general to think like a general. And if he cannot have that sort of power to, and everything is controlled, he will, by the time he reaches, a general in his 50s, his risk-taking ability. Risk-taking is not a young old man's game. It's a young man's game. But I have seen certain civil servants being able to take much more risks because they have been able to think money-wise, but they don't understand the military domain. So I have this fascinating insight into how things work. Okay, so these are certain structural challenges in how our system has come about, but we need to rapidly reorient because finally all nations are national security states. Because everything, all your rights, your economic wealth, everything finally is there because the nation is there. And because we have a constitution and we got the structures to support that particular framework. So if we do not reorient, and that too rapidly, because we have very less time with technologies like AI coming and taking over things, where tomorrow you might not even be able to realize that you are actually subjugated. Okay, because that AI will talk to you individually. It is mapping you and me in real time.
Yeah.
So when you do a Google search with two laptops sitting side by side connected to two different networks, that Google search might throw up a different picture for me and a different picture for you. That is the reality of our world.
Suggestive AI.
Yeah, it is not only going to be suggestive, it will manipulate you in so many ways where you
No,
will not
till
have
now
any.
it is suggestive. I mean,
Right
Google
now it's
is more or less
suggestive.
a
It is still not reached. ChatGPT is supposed to have already shown signs of ability to manipulate. Okay, but these are the initial steps where it is intelligent like a 2-year-old toddler who is just toddling around. Just imagine a wise 60-year-old ChatGPT with experience. You will be putty. Okay.
Yeah,
And the
people will
people
be
who
looking for the
control the
bugs.
chat GPT, and then there will be people and corporations who will control the chat GPT. That will be a East India Company on steroids. Okay, so
I'd love
yeah,
to talk to you more about the and I'm going to request you, sir, for another session on private control of technology. And this is something probably I'd request you if you can take up in the next one. But my last question to you is about, it's a very funny conundrum that we find ourselves. You've spoken about a technological law, then AI law, the control of data, that sort of a law which needs to be brought into India. But when you would do that, the same platforms would be used to create a narrative of you being wanting to control your own particular narrative and saying no, they've got no freedom of speech. See, they're trying to pass laws and control it. So it's a double-edged weapon in this particular game. So firstly, how, I mean, is there some work on the law, and how do you pass by the narrative that you're trying to control everything just by passing a law.
Okay, so nations are finally governed by laws, the constitution, and the constitutional framework, and we need to carefully legislate our laws. But we
Mhm.
have today reached a situation where I don't know whether our legislative process is. If you look at Western democracies, they've got Foreign Agents Registration Act, they've got a lobbying act. We have no such things.
Yep.
Our industrial bodies are primarily catering to foreign companies, and they come sit there and they sit on the table and they are the ones who give inputs. So I don't know whether our legislative process is robust enough. Is it too late? I have no clue. My aim is, as a former military man and today as an academic, to write, tell people like you, come on shows like yours, write papers, educate people, and then I've done my bit. I'll continue to do my bit, but I'm not going to be a crusader. Take it up. That's for the political leadership to do it. That's for the young to do it. I can educate. That's not my aim. So yeah. So by telling you this much itself, you can think we've not been able to get that law for protecting our fundamental right after
Yeah.
so many years. Okay. So if you cannot even guard your fundamental right by a legislative effort and it is getting delayed inordinately, that's a cause for worry.
That's a big cause of worry, sir. Sir, this has been an eye opener. Honestly, I've made so many little notes here which I need to read myself. I think your writings are going to be quite helpful. And to my audience, I'd really request please follow Sir on Twitter, and as well as just Google. You don't need to dig around much. There's enough that Sir has written about this particular game. uh, I am a novice in terms of understanding technology and how this thing. I understand there's a threat, but I'm quite a novice in terms of understanding how this game is evolving. To me, AI was something that was shown on TV, and I said, okay, fair enough. This machines are rising. Till the time I started reading about the game, and then you hear people actually talking about that particular threat. So you say, okay, my naivete in terms of understanding the threat of AI was pretty much accurate, because you wondered how the world is going to change, and the world is changing really, really fast. I remember 10 years ago, so I drove a long distance, about 2000 kilometers, and those days you had this little screen phone where Google Map was there, but it wasn't as accurate as anything else. So it was basically a direction. Hi, I'm in right direction. I'm going. Okay, fine. Today, you're probably taking a turn while walking into a certain aspect. So that's how much technology has impacted our daily lives. Thank you so much for helping us actually crack the code a little bit, and probably creating a little curiosity for us to dig further, sir. And I'm going to be looking forward for another and many more sessions with you to understand this thing a little further. And I do hope people listen to you and actually bring about the laws that are actually required, uh, without bothering for the whole narrative war that will be launched on us when we try and regulate these things. Thank you so much, sir. Until next time, Jai Hind.
Thank you, Adi. Thank you for having me on the show. I too remain a perpetual student of this domain. Things keep rapidly changing, but it was a pleasure and honor to be on your show. Thank you.